Republican Senator David Vitters of Louisiana is running for re-election this year. Without any primary challengers, he was going to sail through to the general election in November. The deadline for qualification in the Republican primary was today. It seemed as though Mr. Vitters was in the clear. But then, when the Secretary of State's office opened its doors this morning, 16 people qualified to challenge David Vitters. 16. That's a baker's dozen plus 3. They include a prominent political figure and a former Louisiana Supreme Court Justice, Chet Taylor, and an orthopedic surgeon who has run for public office twice before. So why? Why would 16 different Republicans think they have a chance against an incumbent senator like David Vitters? Why would they decide to launch a campaign now? Well, if you know one thing about Senator David Vitters and his career in public service over the last couple of years, it's that he has a hooker problem. Senator Vitters ran for office as a family values guy and called on President Clinton to resign for his indiscretion. And then he admitted to being a client of the D.C. Maddow.
I am completely responsible, and I'm so very, very sorry.
Classy to bring your wife there, dude. Senator Vitters did not resign. He stayed in office, but that does not explain why so many Republican challengers came out of the woodwork today to run against him. So why now? Well, perhaps it's because David Vitters is no longer just the senator with the hooker problem. Senator Vitters now has a much bigger and much more serious women problem, a really, really big women problem. And here's why. Senators have a lot of people working for them, office aides and staffers, people who are experts on certain issues who can assist their bosses on legislation and policy. One of Mr. Vitters' longtime aides, a guy named Brent Fuhrer, has had a string of legal problems, reportedly including a number of drunk driving convictions. Now, that's awkward since the senator has publicly advocated on behalf of Mothers Against Drunk Driving. After one such conviction, Senator Vitters' regional director in Louisiana personally oversaw Mr. Fuhrer's court-ordered community service. Then things got worse. In 2008, Mr. Fuhrer attacked his ex-girlfriend at his apartment. According to the police report, quote, the complainant and the suspect became involved in a verbal dispute about the different telephone numbers inside her cellular phone. He threw the cable box into the glass table, smashing it to pieces. Then Mr. Fuhrer refused to allow his 27-year-old ex-girlfriend to leave. And when she tried to walk out, he pushed her to the floor. She screamed. He covered her mouth with his hand. She tried to call the police. He broke her phone. Again, reading directly from the police report, quote, the suspect grabbed a knife from the nightstand and stabbed her in the left hand. The suspect grabbed an unknown object and placed it underneath the left part of her neck. The suspect asked the complainant, do you want to die? The complainant replies, and she stated, no, I don't want to die. The object, presumably the knife that Senator Vitters' aide held to the throat of his ex-girlfriend, cut her chin. She needed 8 stitches. Now, unlike so many others, this domestic violence incident was actually reported to the police, and Mr. Fuhrer pled guilty to 3 charges. So how did Mr. Fuhrer's boss, a United States senator, deal with this serious offense? What happened to Mr. Fuhrer's career as an employee in Senator David Vitters' office? I'll tell you what happened. He was assigned to cover women's issues in the senator's office. No, really, women's issues. This week, for the first time in weeks, Vitters appeared in public and was forced to answer questions about his newest women's problem.
But still, you have your women's affairs aide. As the media, if that's incorrect, he's the women's affairs aide. Is that correct?
That's absolutely incorrect.
I mean, he just resigned, and you let him stay on the staff since the events happened in 2008, so it wasn't just 2 years ago.
Well, the event was 2 years ago. The discipline he got in the office was 2 years ago.
Why'd you let him? What kind of discipline did he get in the office?
Anybody else?
He handled issues including abortion issues, including several other issues, but not women's affairs.
Yeah, you catch that? He handled abortion issues, but not other women's issues. So in addition to being totally offensive statement, it is also an untrue statement. Talking Points memo dug up this official congressional guidebook from the 111th Congress. That's this Congress, which convened after Mr. Fuhrer assaulted his ex-girlfriend. So if you want to discuss women's issues with someone in Senator David Vitters' office, it was Brent Fuhrer you would talk to. Think about this. If Brent Fuhrer had stabbed someone on the steps of the Capitol or in a bar, would he have been let back on Vitters' staff? It's really hard to think he would have been. Like I said, Senator Vitters, huge women problems. Joining us now is Terry Oneill, the president of the National Organization for Women and a longtime Louisiana resident. Terry, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
You were a law professor at Tulane University in New Orleans, an amazing town. You did some work for the Louisiana chapter of Now. As a Louisianan, do you think Senator Vitters has a women problem?
I think he has a terrible women problem. I think he doesn't belong in the United States Senate. And my organization, the National Organization for Women, has called for the Senate to censure him and expel him.
Now, Senator Vitters is defending himself now by saying, look, this is sort of an old issue. It was 2 years ago, and this is water under the bridge. We have to move on. And I take it that you don't agree, but why not? Why is this relevant now?
It's rank hypocrisy for him to say that it's 2 years old. He got rid of this guy only when ABC News reported the fact that Mr. Führer was still on his payroll. So it's very much a present issue. He has had this man on his payroll for years, knowing, apparently, Senator Vitters knew that Mr. Führer had committed this crime, and knowing that, he keeps him on his payroll and has him working on women's issues. This is very current. It's not 2 years old.
You know, having people that are close to me that work in domestic violence and reading the incident report, I'm just struck by how much this is a classic textbook case of a domestic abuser. All of the behavior, the phone incident, the sort of controlling, not letting her leave. You know, what action, this is someone who clearly has a problem, I think. What action should the senator have taken when this was brought to the office's attention?
Well, the first thing that should have happened is the man should not be working in the senator's office and being paid with taxpayer dollars. As a survivor of domestic violence myself, I can tell you it is, in fact, a completely classic incident of domestic violence. And whatever the man may feel that he did something wrong, perhaps he's sorry that he did it, that's fine. That doesn't give him a right to work in a United States Senate office on women's issues. He needs to be separated from that job. He should not be representing the public.
I want you to address the thought experiment at the end of the intro there. I mean, do you think this is a case in which, had this been him stabbing someone in a bar or stabbing someone in the Capitol, that this would have been handled in a more serious fashion? I mean, does this represent a sort of unseriousness towards domestic abuse?
You know, it's really a problem. Domestic abuse is not taken as seriously as it needs to be. There are many states, including, for example, New York, where choking is not even a felony. Choking can cause death. If you murder someone by choking, that would be a felony, but just choking is not. We need to have better laws to protect women against domestic violence. But even more importantly, Senator Vitters' protection of the man in this case shows such a disdain for the women of Louisiana and such disdain really for the women of the entire country. And that is why we have called for him to be expelled from the Senate.
Okay, Terry Oneill, president of the National Organization of Women, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Chris.